Namaskar. I welcome to my channel GST Samvad in the today's episode. My name is Advocate Abhay Kolte. Today we are going to discuss about the concept of RCM, that is the reverse charge mechanism, as provided under the GST Act. Now let me first clarify that this particular discussion on RCM is going to be happen in two parts. Now in today's part, that is the first part, we will be covering the conceptual understanding and some definitions of the RCM. In the second part, we will consider a little more details about the scheme, that is the suspension of the scheme in between the period and the exemptions available, as well as a little bit of procedures. So that will be in the second part. So let us begin with the first thing, that to understand what is the reverse charge mechanism. Now reverse charge mechanism is not a new concept. It was earlier available under the service tax regime also, under the Finance Act 1994. It is carried forward a bit in some refined form in the Goods and Services Tax from 2017. It was further modified a bit, that we will consider in the second part, and that modified version of the RCM is now today we can say it's quite finely fine-tuned for the purpose of operational convenience. Now let us first understand what is RCM, what is the reverse charge. Now to understand what is reverse charge, first we should understand what is the forward charge. Now forward charge, as normally in any business practice you may be aware that the tax is payable by the person who is a taxable person as defined under the Act. Now so far as the Goods and Services Tax is concerned, the taxable person is defined under section 2/17, that is subsection 17 of section 2, which says that the taxable person is a person who supply the goods or services to the other person. Now this is a forward charge. Now when a person supplies goods or services, he raises the invoice on the recipient, and in the invoice he charges the tax, that is Goods and Services Tax. Now this is a normal forward charge. Now for this purpose, the purpose the person who is required to issue the invoice should be a registered person. Now the registered person, as per section 22 and 24 of the CGST Act, it has been defined in those two sections. Now such a registered person can only issue invoice by charging the tax in the invoice to the recipient for the goods being supplied or services being supplied or already supplied by him. Now this taxable person is required to charge the tax and collect from the recipient and deposit it to the credit of the government. Now this is specifically provided in the charging section, that is section 9 subsection 1 of the CGST Act and section 5 subsection 1 of the IGST Act. Now these are the charging section which says that the taxable person is liable to pay the tax. Now the reverse charge is what? The reverse charge is a charge or a payment, a liability of payment of tax is on the recipient, not on the supplier. Since it is reverse, it is called as RCM. Now reverse charge is a liability which is defined under section 2 subsection 98 of the CGST Act. Now the question will arise that how this can be possible. A person who is not a supplier of goods or services and still he is liable to pay the tax. What is the logic behind it? The logic behind is that the ease of collection of tax. It is for the government to decide where the government is feeling or finding it convenient to collect the tax from particular person, and at the same time where the government feel or government is thinking that it is difficult to collect the tax from the person supplying the goods or services. And for the ease of convenience and collection of tax, the government specifies the persons to whom this particular RCM is applicable. Now, with this, we come to the next conceptual aspect of the thing, that there are two types of RCM. First type is that is RCM under notification. Now, this is empowered by Section 9, subsection 3 of CGST and Section 5, subsection 3 of the IGST Act. Now, by the virtue of the powers vested in the government, of course, after the recommendation of the Council, GST Council, the government can notify the person to whom the RCM is applicable. Now, in this, typically the most commonly used is the goods transport operators or the goods transport agencies, and secondly, of course, the advocates, senior advocates, the arbitral tribunal, etc., etc. That we will consider in the second part. So, these are the categories of persons to whom RCM is applicable. Means, when you avail services or the goods supplied by this type of persons, you are required to pay the tax being a recipient. The provider, the supplier is not required to pay, the recipient is required to pay the tax. The liability is on the recipient. So this is the first type. The second type is that the reverse charge is applicable when a registered person is receiving the goods from unregistered person. Now there are many persons who are under the unorganized sector or who are very small, whose turnover is very small as compared to the limits provided under the CGST Act or IGST Act. Now such persons are unregistered. Now when a registered person receives goods or services from such unregistered person, he is required to pay the tax on reverse charge basis. Now this is authorized by Section 9 into bracket 4, that is Section 9 subsection 4 of the CGST Act, and Section 5 subsection 4 of the IGST Act. So this is the broad outline of the liability. Now the thing is that the most interesting aspect is, of course, the payment and the availment of the input tax credit, ITC. This is the most commonly discussed and debated issue under the RCM scheme. So far, whatever we have discussed is, I think most of the people are already aware of this, but still, for the conceptual clarity, I discussed all these aspects. But the main problem or the main aspect which is of the interest of the trade and industry is the ITC. Now here I would like to point out two, three very important aspects which normally people are not aware or people are ignorant about it. Now reverse charge, the tax under reverse charge is required to be paid by electronic cash register only. The tax on reverse charge basis cannot be paid by electronic credit register. In other words, whatever is the ITC available in your electronic credit register, you cannot use that credit for the payment of tax under reverse charge mechanism. The tax under reverse charge mechanism has to be paid by the cash element available in your electronic cash register on the system. Now, this is the very important aspect that some people are making mistake, that they try to utilize this reverse charge payment on the basis of electronic credit register. But the provision is very clear and there is no doubt about it, that has to be paid by the cash register only. Now, the question is ITC. Now, the condition for ITC is that ITC can be availed only after payment of the tax under RCM. once you pay the tax under RCM, after that only you are entitled to avail the credit. Now the question, interesting question that arises, when ITC can be taken? Can it be done on the same day? So for this aspect, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes, CBIC, has already clarified that supposing if you pay the tax on this date, that is 10th of July, after payment of tax by electronic cash register, you can avail the credit on the same day after payment of tax. The event of payment of tax is to be first. Immediately after that, you can avail the credit. Now, this is because the logic why only cash register is required to be, I mean, only cash balance is required to be used for payment of tax. The answer is, or the logic is that the tax on RCM basis, that is reverse charge basis, is not a output tax which is normally understood. Now, output tax which is defined under the Act, the RCM tax is not covered in that definition, and therefore for the payment of reverse charge basis tax you have to utilize the electronic cash register only and nothing else. So these are the important aspects of RCM. After that, many questions are there about the applicability. There were some suspension of the RCM liability, some notification, counter notifications were issued, some amendments were carried out. So that details, and of course the person or the services to whom this RCM is applicable, that we will discuss in our next part. So I hope you like this particular discussion. So if you find it interesting, kindly like, share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.